Hey everybody, Alan Cox here. Today we're going to talk about one of the most powerful evolutions in Microsoft 365, and that is multi-tenant organization, also known as MTO. So if your organization operates across multiple tenants, maybe through mergers, acquisitions, these sort of things, you've likely faced the pain of the siloed collaboration, duplicate identities, just challenges in getting to a rich, seamless collaboration. Multi-tenant organization, or MTO, addresses many of those challenges that we have faced historically. And so that's going to be our topic today. We're likely going to cover this in a couple videos, but we're going to dive right in. So let's get started as we talk about multi-tenant organization and what it can do for your organization. So let's get started. All right, here we are in one of my tenants. Now, since we're talking about multi-tenant organization, obviously we're talking about multiple tenants, more than one tenant. We will be using a couple tenants today, and we certainly can sync bidirectional, and I'll show you that, how all of that works. Now, the limitation is you can have up to 100 tenants in the multi-tenant organizational group or scope, and that includes your owner tenant. Now, the owner tenant, or the what we often call the target tenant, but you can sync in multiple directions, but typically the way we see it is an organization is kind of the mothership. They acquire another organization. All of that organization, or part of that organization that's been acquired, sinks into the target tenant and accesses resources there. But certainly we can go in both directions, and it's not uncommon to do so. So we're going to take a look at that, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of tips and tricks along the way and some gotchas. And so while Microsoft continues to build this out and work on this, there are certainly some things that I feel that can be improved, but it has come a long way. So let's just get started. To build it is relatively simple, but I want to back up just a little bit and go over just a couple seconds of history here. So the way the technology that this uses is actually in Entra ID, formerly Azure AD, and we would go down here to this cross-tenant synchronization, and we'll notice in the configurations here we will not have any configuration set. Now this is my target, we'll call this my target tenant, or my owner tenant. This is where we start the configuration and build the MTO, and then we join from there. Now the way this used to be done is this cross-tenant synchronization, which has been around for a while, is to actually go in and build a new configuration. We'd have to walk through this sort of manually. Now it is very much wizard driven, and we'll take a look at that here in just a second. So I'm in the admin center, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to show all here. We're going to go to settings and org settings. And now I say multi-tenant organization, they've rechanges to multi-tenant collaboration, and so that's what we see that here in multi-tenant collaboration. And so we will go here and we will go in there. We're going to click multi-tenant collaboration. And all we have to do here is we're going to set up or join an existing multi-tenant organization or collaboration in this case. This is my owner tenant, so it's here we're going to actually be setting up the tenant, setting up the MTO. So we're going to get started, and we're going to create a new multi-tenant organization. So we're just going to click next here, and all I'm going to type here is it's just a name that makes sense. And if we look at this, it can be an organization name we use to help other tenants identify the multi-tenant organization. And so that's essentially what we're going to do. And I'll just call this CBG MTO. Nothing really specific about that. And then we can just call this CBGs or Contoso, something, whatever. multi-tenant org. Okay. Now on the tenants, we need to go out and we need to find any tenants that will be joining this MTO. And so I have another tenant here, and I'm going to switch over to that particular tenant. We're going to jump into this tenant, and then we'll call this one Contoso. And so we're going to go into the, what we need to get here is the tenant ID. So I'm going to go into Enter ID, and I'm going to copy that. And I'm literally just going to tab back over here to my multi-tenant organization, and I'm going to paste that here. We'll see that it's going to come up and tell me that that is Contoso. It recognizes the tenant. So we're going to click that. If you don't recognize that, then you may want to make sure that you've got the right tenant selected there. We're going to click Next. Now we're going to allow users to sync into this tenant from other tenants in this multi-tenant organization. So basically, we're just saying, yeah, I want users to be able to sync into this tenant. That's it. We're turning it on. And then I also want to suppress the consent prompts for users from the other tenant when they access apps and resources in my tenant. All that basically says is we're not because they're accessing apps in another tenant, we're just going to suppress all the consent apps. You consent to this, this app in this org, may be able to view your profile and all that. We're going to suppress all of that and make it as seamless as possible for the user. So we're just going to click Next here, and then we're just going to create the multi-tenant organization, and we're going to let that go. And there's all the information. Now, by the way, it's given me what I need, the details for the other side, the multi-tenant organization for the joiners or for the members of this. And so it's basically saying, hey, here's your tenant ID. You should copy this tenant ID. I'm going to click Done here. And this is going to kind of build it out. And while that's going, I'm going to go over to my source tenant or my member tenant and do a join. And we're going to walk through kind of a similar step here in the admin center. I'm going to go here to show all. I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to say org settings, and then go to org profile and multi-tenant collaboration. And in this case, we join an existing. Here's the tenant ID I just copied from over there. It recognizes it's CVG. I'm going to allow users to sync into this tenant. So in other words, we're up front, we're allowing and turning this on. Doesn't mean that we are necessarily going to sync one direction or the other, but I certainly want it to be enabled. You don't have to, but it means that we would have to turn this on if we ever wanted to sync from the owner tenant back into the member tenant, into this tenant, which is very, very common. And again, I'm going to suppress consent and all that, and I'm going to say join. Now it's going to join. It's going to give me the same information. The next thing we want to do is we'd want to use the Share Users button in the Multi-Tenant Collaboration page to select the users we want to share across the organization. We'll take a look at that. So we have to wait for this to be added, and so I'm waiting. And once we see this, I'll refresh here. And there's a couple things that I may want to do, but I want to wait for just a second. We're going to let this continue to build. I'm going to refresh this. Okay. Member status is active. To enable collaboration, you need to share users with the other tenants in this multi-tenant organization. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. I just want to double check and make sure that we are. I'm going to refresh this. Okay, there we go. So now I want to share users. And we'll talk about a couple different ways we can do that, and then we'll look at a couple different settings here real quick. So first of all, I can go in and I can just click this share users, and we'll see that there is a we may have to wait just a second for this to load the data. I'm going to let this refresh here for just a second, see if we can't do this. Share users. Okay, so there is a simplified sync and a customized sync. Simplified sync only allows you to add users to users that you want to sync over. And by that, I don't want to be confused. I don't want you to be confused and think that we can sync a group over. You cannot sync groups. This is only users. However, if you have a group that contains users, you can sync all the users in that group. As long as it's not nested, you can sync them over to the other tenant. I'll show you kind of what I mean by that. So on the simplified sync, we notice it says we can only sync selected users for a simplified sync. I'm gonna do that, and so I'm gonna say let's sync over Megan. Okay, so Megan can be synced over. We can sync Alex, right? So Alex Wilbur, we're gonna sync him over one at a time, right? We can do it that way, and they'll sync over, and it takes a little while, 40 minutes or so, for them to get that initial sync. We can do that at the user level. And that works if you're piloting and all of that. But if you want, let's back up here, to do a customized sync, that's where we would go into, I'm going to leave this here, we'll go into Azure or Enter ID, and remember we had this cross-tenant synchronization. We will see the cross-tenant synchronization show up now because we've built an MTO and it builds it automatically for us, right? This MTO sync. So if we go in, and notice it's incomplete configuration, and we'll look at that in a minute. But if we go in here, what we could do is we could manage users and groups and add, notice groups now. So, for example, we'll let this go here. Let's say we had this group here, and in this group were different members. Then I could select that, and now it would eventually, and it does take considerable time, but it would sync the members of that group over to the other tenant. One way that I often do that is by going into group, and I might create a new group. We'll just say this is a security group. We're going to call this MTO pilot. Okay, and we can give it a description. We're not going to be any roles assigned, group owners, group members, and I'm just going to go some members here. And let's just say we're going to do Megan. And let's just say we're going to do Alex. Okay, we're going to add them as members. And then once we create that MTO pilot group, once it's created, and it will take it a second or so, but we can go into our cross-tenant synchronization and now go into our configuration, users and groups, add users and groups. We'll see if this has showed up just yet. I'm not sure if it will have yet. So we can go MTO. There it is, MTO pilot group. And now I've basically assigned a group. Only users directly in the group will have access. The assignment will not cascade to nested groups, as we talked about. So basically, that is what we meant. And I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm not going to do that really at all. I'm going to focus on the simplified sync, but that's what it's meant by the custom sync, where you can create a group and the members of that group will sync. I'm going to do a simplified sync, and I'm just going to go Alex and Megan for now. And we're going to save that. Save users all activities. Yes, that's fine. Okay. And then we're going to look at a couple configuration options here that I do. So it's validating all of that. And in just a second, this is going to go configured, but I'm waiting. So the users are being shared with the CBG tenant. Now, one thing that I do is I go into this cross-tenant synchronization configuration, and let's look at a couple things on this MTO and under the provisioning, and it may take it, there we go, mapping. So it's automatic provisioning, mappings. this is where we can go in and change a couple things. For example, we will look at how we can identify users from a certain tenant. But one thing you could do is you can add a special suffix or prefix to their display name. So, display name, and then you can do like append to Contoso so that it shows up all over the global address book as being from a particular organization. You can do that. But one of the things I generally do almost always, and here is the key to how this works. The users are coming in as members. That's the fundamental difference in an MTO and how it works, multi-tenant organization, and how the rich, seamless collaboration works so well, is because it is not done at the, is not a guest. These are not coming in as guests. And so because of that, it's very, it's a much better collaboration experience because they're basically treated the same as if the user is internal. And so, but what I do is I always change this to always, because if something were to change, I don't want it to be the default to say only during object creation, because maybe I want to make a change and I don't want that, to convert somebody to a guest, for example, and then change it back. I just always make sure that this is always set to always. And really that's about it, but there's other things you can change in here. And so the only other one that I've done occasionally is done the display name, add something after their user, their name that basically says dash Contoso or dash Fabricam or some other organization that you can help identify where they're coming from, especially if you have a large organization. So that is the one thing I do. I'm just going to save that. I'm going to save that, and then we're going to look at our multi-tenant collaboration configuration. You really don't have to do much else here because it's all really done here. And I'm going to refresh this and see if we have configuration yet. Okay, not configured, but I'm going to look at a couple settings here. So I'm in the source tenant. So I'm in this, the tenant that is syncing across organization to, this is a member of the MTO, not the owner. I'm going to go into settings here, and here's where we can change calendar free busy information. And it's very simple because all I have to do is say, yeah, we want to be able to see calendar information cross tenant over to the CBG tenant or our target tenant. So I'm going to update the free busy calendar settings, and it's just that simple. Now, I'm going to do something else that's here that's called a label. And a label only appears in Teams right now, but basically what labels do is help in Teams identify the organization that a user is in or from. We'll see that more when we do part 2 and talk about the user side, the user experience. So waiting for this to update this setting. We're good there. I'm done there. We're going to go back. We're going to look at this external tag. That's actually new. We're going to take a look at that external tag in Outlook. So here we can suppress the external tag for MTO members so they don't come in as an external user if you've got some sort of thing. I like that. That's pretty new. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then we're going to look at a couple other things. So we're good there. Good there. I'm going to refresh this and see if our configuration has shown yet. If not, we'll go to the target tenant and do a couple things there. So we'll wait on that. And so good. I'm going to go to the target tenant. I'm going to refresh this. So I'm now in the target tenant. And we're going to go in and manage settings here, just like we did over there. And here I'm going to do the same thing. The MTO name, I can change this. Free busy, I'm going to edit calendar settings. And now I want to see free busy on the Contoso side or the source side. So I'm just going to click that and save that out. You can see this is not really overly complicated. There's a few little gotchas and stuff that we'll talk about probably in part 2 when we do this, but we'll certainly but here in 20 minutes, we're basically done. We've got a few things we're going to do yet. So we did free busy. Again, that external tag, I want to suppress the external tag. I don't want these users to be seen as external in Outlook. So I'm gonna do that. We're going to click that. Save it. Good to go. Now here's that label. And this label, I'm going to use custom label, and for CBG users, I want their label to be CBG. Usually I'll just use the organizational name. Come on, there we go. Contoso. Okay, we could use source, target, whatever, just for our demo purposes here. But we'll see where these show up here in just a little bit. So we're done there, got there, good there. I'm going to refresh here. And I'm going to see if the configurations have come through, because what we'll get is we'll get this that says basically, there we go. So it is enabled. Okay. Now I want to look at a couple things here. I'm going to click here. Actually, I would just want to click here. Okay, we're good. Configurations. 2 users are shared. Here's the users shared to that organization. So basically, this reads a little funny, but essentially this says the source tenant, which is where I'm at, I'm in Contoso, MTO syncing to CBG or our target tenant is enabled. Okay. All right. So, so I click in here and it gives me some of the configurations about what I'm sending over to them. Okay. So we're sending 2 users. We're allowed inbound sync. Calendars and sharing is enabled. All of that, we are good to go. Now let me click this Contoso tenant, and it doesn't really give us a whole lot of information. Tenant label is no label, but that will come over in a minute. We just did that a minute ago. I'm going to refresh this and see if, in fact, it did come over. And we'll see. And then it did. So there's the Contoso label that we configured over in the other tenant. So perfect. We are looking good. Now I'm going to go to the target tenant now. I'm going back over to the CBG tenant, and I'm going to look, and we're going to refresh this. And what we... Okay, good. And I'm just going to double check some settings here. We're going to look at configurations. Okay, we're not doing outbound sync to them. Tenant label good. Inbound users. Inbound sync, we're good there. Tenant label, good. Now, let's do this. Let's see what users we have in our environment. Notice we have Alex Wilbur, unlicensed, and Megan Bowen. These are both users that we selected to sync from the target, from the source tenant to here. Notice it has that particular, that tenant. It tells you that it's an EXT. It is an external. However, they are not guests, and that is the fundamental difference. Don't believe me? Let's go take it out in Active Directory and see what we can find there. I'm going to go to users here. And we see Alex Wilbur is a member. It is an external AD sent by invitation, auto accepted because we told it to. There's Megan, member. Okay. And why does that matter? Well, if they go to Microsoft Teams, we'll see if this is enabled yet. It takes it sometimes a little while, which is where we're going to break for part 2 of this, but we'll take a look. I'm going to try to get into Teams here. So if I go into Teams and I chat with, we're going to see if Megan shows up here yet. Megan does not. we're going to give that a little bit of time because that does usually take a little more time. And then we will see Megan on this side, and we will see the end user experience in part 2. But right now we have our MTO set up. We've done a little bit of tweaking on the mapping, but really nothing really to configure here. It just set it up for us automatically. We didn't have to go in and do the whole new configuration stuff and go through all of that. It does it now automatically. Same thing with this side on the target side. If we were to go into the cross-tenant synchronization, go to configurations, we'll see this is all configured here as well. And I might as well just make that change here. But it's a little different because we are syncing one direction right now. It's really not too much different though, you know, because we can go in and we can add and add users to it and sync the other direction. We can go into, you know, we can go into the MTO and we'll go to org settings here, org profile, multi-tenant. Here's our MTO. If I want to share users the other direction, I can say, hey, who do we want to send? Well, I can say, well, I'm going to do a simple search as we talked about, and I'm going to say, well, let's send me over, right? So we can send me over, and that's it. And then I will then sync over to the other organizations as well. So I will sync over to the source organization. Right now, nothing's configured to sync that direction, which is why everything is not applicable at this moment, because we're only doing single directional sync, which is probably how we'll leave it. But that's totally that is totally fine. I'm going to do one quick check just to see if Megan has actually showed up. And because it does take a little bit of time, and so I think we'll just pause there, and we will pick it back up in part 2 next time we come back. So we'll anyway, but that is multi-tenant organization. We've set it up, we've configured it. Now we're just really waiting for some dust to settle, and sometimes that takes a little bit of time. And once that is done, we will continue. Well, I hope this has been helpful, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. And that's it. Until next time, we'll talk later.